A compelling new documentary seeks to dispel the mainstream narrative surrounding George Floyd's death in Minneapolis and police officer Derek Chauvin's trial. Led by journalist Liz Collin from Alpha News, the documentary titled The Fall of Minneapolis also delves into the aftermath of the Black Lives Matter riots and the breakdown of law and order. Drawing from Collin's best-selling book, They're Lying, the Media, the Left and the Death of George Floyd, the crowdfunded project has already racked up well over 600,000 views on Rumble alone since Thursday. Here's a teaser of the film.
Murder of George Floyd.
Murder and manslaughter.
Murder of George Floyd.
Peaceful protest overnight in the Twin Cities.
They've been very peaceful. The crowd continues to be peaceful.
8:46, 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
9 minutes and 29 seconds.
Actually, 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
By the way, that particular technique is not authorized by the MPD.
Is this a trained Minneapolis Police Department technique?
It is not.
When I heard that, I really wanted to get up off my chair and yell, bull.
From what I've seen of the videotape and the photograph and the police training manual, they look pretty identical.
Were you trained in MRT, the maximal restraint technique?
Yes.
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 Yes, all the police officers were trained in the MRT.
Joining me now is investigative journalist and the producer of The Fall of Minneapolis, Liz Collin. Liz, why did you make this documentary?
Thank you very much for having me on. You know, we put this together after putting out the book, you know, realizing, of course, not everyone is going to take the time to read a book nowadays, but we really just wanted to put the truth out there once and for all. I was very close to the story and sort of had a front row seat to all of this. My husband was a longtime Minneapolis police officer and the president of the police union at the time, and I was in mainstream media. I left mainstream media over all of this, just tired of pushing this propaganda and also being privy to information that we were not giving to the public to properly inform them of the truth on all of this. And here we are still paying the consequences to this day.
Well, you were personally impacted because of your husband's role. You were an anchor at a CBS affiliate and you had to step down from your role. Just before we talk about this case, tell me about the personal impact, because you had mobs turning up at your home.
Yeah, so I was a long-time anchor and reporter at WCCO, a CBS station, for nearly 15 years in all. But I was demoted over all of this. We saw the cancel culture kind of come after myself and my family that summer, as they did basically anyone who had any ties to law enforcement. But clearly, I needed to, lose my job and be killed over all of this. This is what they decided to go with, and and I'm certainly wasn't the only one. We had several protests at our home that summer, but it really, that force that came out kept so many people quiet and fearful of telling the truth in all of this. And I knew that there were stories there that the media simply ignored, and something that I kind of just wanted to get out there, because I think once you watch the film and read the book, you realize that this simply did not have to happen the way it did if the truth was told from the beginning.
Well, what are the major misconceptions of that whole saga, the death of George Floyd and the BLM riots that followed?
So much of this was manipulated and kept from the public, and we start that in the film itself with the body camera footage. This is footage that was withheld from the public for nearly 2.5 months. That's never happened before with any sort of critical incident when it comes to Minneapolis police. We were allowed to see this viral Facebook video, and that's all. But in the body camera footage, you clearly hear and see George Floyd talking about how he can't breathe long before Derek Chauvin arrives on scene. You have a black officer who arrests George Floyd that day. And remember, this was all supposed to be about race. That's what we were told. Not only is Alex King involved, but Tu Tao, who's Hmong American. Half of the police officers who respond that day are minority officers. But we weren't allowed to hear about that. We weren't allowed also to see for ourselves how George Floyd was acting, not complying with commands. You have the officers asking, "What are you on? What did you take?" And he again denies again and again that he took anything. And you also have an arrest that happens in 2019 that we're not told about. We're told that Minneapolis police didn't know George Floyd. They had nothing to do with him before. But in fact, he was the subject of an undercover drug investigation in 2019 that we were not allowed to see. And when you play that body camera footage next to what transpired in 2020, it's almost identical.
Now, this week there has been a development on his Derek Chauvin's appeal. The Supreme Court has rejected the appeal, which centred around the denial of the decision to keep the proceedings in Minneapolis, which Derek Chauvin's legal team argued deprived him of his right to a fair trial because of the pre-trial publicity and the threat of violence and riots in the event he was acquitted. Liz, was this decision expected, and what's next for Chauvin?
Yeah, I think sadly it was in the world we live in nowadays. The attorneys, they were hopeful that something would happen at the level of the U.S. Supreme Court, but they also knew that this was a pretty long shot after everything that's been allowed to happen. But again, this trial, and we talk about this in the film quite a bit, wasn't really about what jurors were allowed to see, but what was kept from them. There are a couple more legal maneuvers here that they hope to make in the coming weeks and such. So we'll stay tuned for that. I know the other attorneys involved with the other three officers have some things going on as well. Certainly they were hopeful for a different result in this, but also not too surprised by what the U.S. Supreme Court decided today.
Well, there's another appeal underway with evidence indicating that Chauvin himself did not cause George Floyd's death. The Associated Press is reporting in a motion filed in federal court, Chauvin said he never would have pled guilty to the charge in 2021 if he'd known about the theories of a Kansas pathologist with whom he began corresponding in February. Chauvin is asking the judge who presided over his trial to throw out his conviction and order a new trial, or at least an evidentiary hearing. Has this been a miscarriage of justice, Liz? There was such an atmosphere, such a climate of retribution. Someone had to pay. We saw the riots throughout the country. In fact, there were riots internationally, BLM-inspired riots. Is what happened to Derek Chauvin, in your opinion, a miscarriage of justice?
Yeah, I've never seen something like this up close as a journalist, where there is so much public documentation and such, which is what we're supposed to go on, that points in one direction, but the press pushed the public in the other direction in such a way that it almost was, you're a conspiracy theorist, or you have to be crazy if you care about the facts here. And that's why I say, even if you don't have a connection to law enforcement, or care about what's happened with skyrocketing crime all across the country, this story really is about the justice system in America and what that says. Alex King speaks to this in the movie itself, talking about how, don't fall for this. Don't fall for this race bait. Don't fall for what the media pushes. We are better than this as people, and we are critical thinkers. So let's not let this happen again in our country. And I think, everybody can kind of decide for themselves after seeing the film, or if they read the book. There's a lot more in the book that you can only kind of boil down into a 90-minute film, but I think this really does speak to where we are, as a country at this point with our justice system, letting the mob rule the day.
Well, yeah, there's an issues with the justice system, but there's also issues with the media. And we saw the media lies about the protests being mostly peaceful. We saw the whitewashing of some of the extreme violence and destruction of those riots. And now we're seeing the impact of that entire defund the police agenda. And its impact is being most severe for Black communities. Has the American left acknowledged the destruction this entire defund the police movement has caused, and has the BLM movement also taken a hit in the aftermath?
Yeah, I think there's been quite a bit reported on Black Lives Matter and just what that organization turned into, not helping Black lives at all. That's been well documented as to what's transpired there. But I think we've also come to a point now where people will not admit that they were wrong, and they led people down the wrong path. And I think that's why, I'm grateful for you for giving this documentary and this movie some attention. But you have, certainly a line in the sand. This won't be getting the attention of the mainstream media at all, because they'd have to admit that they were wrong. I mean, I worked at a place that was pushing this very divisive narrative, and it changed the way we shaped and we formed news stories. And I wasn't comfortable with that, and also just painting our men and women who protect and serve each and every day, in such a bad light, portraying them as the bad guys again and again. And I think that damage, sadly, really can't be undone at this point.
Liz Collin, thank you so much for your time, and I urge everyone to check out the documentary for themselves, The Fall of Minneapolis. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.